You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you along as the NFL has descended en masse upon the Circle City, specifically Lucas Oil Stadium and the Indiana Convention Center downtown, for the annual NFL Scouting Combine. GMs, coaches, scouts, everyone here to get a good...
Bloggers, everybody.
Up close and personal look at some of the best prospects coming out for the 2024 NFL Draft. Fans are able to see the players in action. As we tape this podcast today, Thursday is the first day players will be on the field at Lucas Oil for those workouts, and that'll go through Sunday. Today, I believe it's defensive line linebackers, I think, are the first to go, and then different groups of players will be on the field over the next couple of days. General Manager Chris Ballard spoke with the media just yesterday on Wednesday, so we made sure to give you a Thursday podcast this week so we could adequately break down everything he had to say. We were anticipating Shane Steichen as well. Unfortunately, that was not able to happen. Shane unavailable to speak, so it was just Chris.
He was ill. He was not doing a Belichick.
Under the weather, yes, Shane Steichen. So we'll take Chris, and we realized that we would have gotten 27 words total out of Shane anyway. And
not that the media or the public cares. We're supposed to talk to Shane next week. So
yes,
the Colts are very, very good about getting us personnel when the situation's right.
So we'll get it. We'll be able to talk about that on next week's Colts Blue Zone podcast right here. So download, subscribe. Exactly. Yeah, get us delivered to your podcast listening device as soon as that drops next week. Also, the NFLPA gave out its what is now appearing to be an annual report card of teams. Just evaluating different franchises for different levels of quality for players' experience, whether it's training staffs, whether it's locker rooms, amenities, family, travel, a lot of different things that players are able to grade. And the Colts got their own grade, which we'll get to that in a minute. It's not the worst, certainly, but it's definitely not the best either. Washington is the worst. And the good news is a fellow AFC South team, the Jaguars, no longer have rats in their locker room, guys, because they have a new locker room.
Baby steps.
Exactly. So that's no more rats in Jacksonville. So they got that going for them.
Unbelievable.
That was last year. That was tremendous.
I had forgotten all about that.
Oh yeah.
It brings a smile to my face.
Oh yeah. So
well, we didn't have rats.
Exactly. And even though the rats were gone last year, the Colts still couldn't get a win down there in Jacksonville. That is still me. So when maybe on the Colts report card, they have to put a note that said Dave cannot travel to Jacksonville anymore, and they gave their team Fs for allowing me to still continue to make that trip year after year and see them lose in a different fashion down there year after year. But anyway, no need to delve too far into that. Like I said, defensive line linebackers today at the Combine. Fridays, defensive backs and tight ends. Saturday, running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers. Sundays, the offensive line. All that coverage is on the NFL Network. It starts in the afternoon every day, 3 o'clock for the next couple of days, 1 o'clock on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So lots of NFL coverage and draft coverage for those of us who love that thing. And some people certainly dive into it a whole lot more than others. The Underwear Olympics. But it's here, chap, because it matters in many different ways. It matters. You've been a proponent over the years, and you've said it here on the podcast that the medical aspect of the Combine could be the most important aspect. And it's funny because my wife works as in communications for the IU School of Medicine, so like she's been getting some requests from different media members because IU health doctors who also are affiliated with the IU School of Medicine are getting like media requests for stuff like this, and media are finding out, like news media, like you can't go to Lucas Oil Stadium and be down in the field, and you can't get doctors performing these physical tests. You can't get video of them performing physical tests on players, which has made me laugh. Some of the requests that she get. But anyway, again, that's also neither here nor there for what we're trying to say today. But all that to say, chap, that what's going on today is a very important weekend for NFL scouting departments across the country.
Yeah, we talked. One of the hot topics, or I guess interesting things, is Marvin Harrison Jr. is not working out, or he won't work out at his pro day, and he's basically saying, "This is me." He wants to train for football, specific drills as opposed to so much of what they do at the Combine. Even pro days, it's the 40 and it's speed. It's almost a track audition. But someone asked Ballard yesterday, "What do you think more athletes might do this?" He said, "Not everybody's Marvin Harrison Jr."
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. It's when players, the very, very rare time that players have leverage, they use it. Go back to Eli Manning and San Diego in the draft. I mean, it's John Elway. Go back further, John Elway. When you have leverage, you do it. But Marvin is an aberration. It's although I talked to Brock Bowers today, and he may not work out. Some players don't. They really prefer to have the more controlled, player controlled workout at their pro day,
right?
Where it's their people, it's their trainers. And if I'm a receiver, I understand that. I mean, because part of what they do is they put you through routes, and you've got a quarterback from Georgia throwing to a receiver from LSU or to Liberty, and if you don't know that much about the quarterback or the receiver, then maybe you look bad. So I understand that. But I still think any team that still weighs heavily on-field drills is just doing it wrong. You've got 2, 3, 4 years of tape. You're going to see their pro day. And I tend to think that if a player plays poorly, it raises red flags as opposed to having a good pro day. Say, we got to look at this guy again. No, that's where you're wrong. So it's medical, it's psychological testing, which I include in meeting with teams, and then how do they perform? Because and Ballard mentioned it, you really like to see these guys out there. It says something about the player when he's willing to go head to head against his peers on the same day, on the same field. But I understand why some players don't want to do it and won't do it.
Right. And if you're Marvin Harrison Jr., Matt, there's very little that you can gain through a scenario like this working out at the combine. For many players, there is something that they can gain. Like, absolutely. He's not in that category.
Well, clearly, without measurables for Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to drop out of the top 10, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you would be insane to say, oh, well, he didn't run his 40 time. We can't pick him now.
It's all in the plan for him to come to Indianapolis, guys.
They're hoping he drops to 15.
That's
or
right.
if he gets to 13, you can trade up 2 spots.
Yeah. Maybe Chris would trade up 2 spots. He'd be willing to do that in the first round.
For people who think he's going to trade 4, 5, and you're going to have to go to 4. A team is going to have to go to 4 to get Marvin Harrison.
Or higher, but probably
or
4.
higher, probably. Yeah,
just kind of depends.
You just have to believe that the way the draft always goes and the desperation, where desperation meets a pretty good group of quarterbacks.
Right.
It's hard. I mean, New England doesn't take a quarterback at 3. I mean,
Have to.
really? What
Yeah.
are you doing?
Right.
So, but no, it's really interesting. And again, it's talking to Ballard is really, I enjoy it. He doesn't say a lot. He's very good at saying nothing very well. But again, he doesn't tip his hand. Somebody actually said, "What are you going to do at number 15?" And he kind of rolled it. He rolled his eyes as soon as I did. but he gives you some ins and outs, and we'll talk about it. But it's always and we get better things from him. You know, the way it works, we get 15 minutes at the podium, we meaning the media, and then the local guys, we go around the corner and we get another 10 or 15 minutes, and he's normally better there. And I'll just say the one bit of news, if you want to call it that came out of it, was in our second session, Michael Pittman, and then I asked him, I said, as you stand here, do you, whether it's by the franchise tag or by a long-term contract, will Michael Pittman be a Colt in September? And he said yes, which is the first time he's actually, I mean, we've known it and speculated. They're not letting Michael Pittman go anywhere.
Right. And that's like you said, the one bit of significant news to come out of this. I say significant in the fact that we all expected it, but it is something that's direct from Chris Ballard saying that that Michael Pittman Jr. is going to be a Colt. That is not a surprise based on everything that Chris Ballard has said about Michael Pittman Jr. in the past, based on...
Which he said again,
exactly.
About how he's our kind of guy.
Echoing it again, based on everything that everyone else around Michael Pittman Jr. in the locker room in terms of weapons out wide. He is by far and away the only number one option right now that is in that locker room. And if you're trying to develop a young quarterback, you don't let your best, most talented players walk out the door. So is it surprising? No. But is it an important step forward? Yes. Something is going to happen to keep Michael Pittman in this room, in this building. I would still not be surprised if it is the franchise tag that's used, because it's only a couple more days now.
Yeah.
Well, but again, you do that, and then you still work on the long-term deal
Right,
until,
exactly.
what is it, July, I think it is.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not going to be... I think that, like, Michael Pittman, based on everything that he has said, again, on the other side of this, he wants to go out and see what his value is. And I get that completely. So even if there is an attractive offer from the Colts in front of him right now, if I take Michael Pittman Jr. at his word, he will still probably would prefer take the franchise tag and go out and listen to other teams.
Unless the Colts just
blow him out of the water.
Which if I'm the Colts, well, right now you're bidding against yourselves.
Right. So there's no need to do that right now.
So, but to me, it would now, if the Colts, if the common ground is 4 years at, let's say, $100 million, which 25 million, what is
that's the A.J. Brown contract from 2 years ago. 4 years, $100 million.
The top 8 receivers are making 23, and the top 5 are making 25. Is that what it is? But as we've talked, and this will probably come down to, well, how much money is guaranteed? That's if you're a player in any sport, guaranteed money. We're seeing players get cut now when they were due X number of millions, and they're not getting that. So, but I agree with you. It just does, unless the Colts are just go bonkers on a contract. It behooves Pittman to just see what's out there. Because again, I don't see. I think there will be a team willing to pay him 25, 26, let's say 27, because it's the open market. Let's just say that. But
who would have thought that Christian Kirk would have gotten the contract he had a couple of years ago? So like you said, if there's one team, accomplished. Yes.
But would they also be willing to give up 2 first-round draft picks?
Yeah.
That would, to me, be the sticking point. Ballard would probably take 2 because we know he loves them picks.
He does.
But then you create, if you do that, then you created such a massive hole that you have to fill, and I always say it's easy to cut players or let them go, and it's hard to replace them, especially a number 1 receiver.
And like you said, there are different first-round picks are more valuable than others.
You want KC's first-round pick,
exactly.
or you want
the Bears' first-round
pick.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little different.
So I mean, and if you look at this from a Kansas City standpoint, you're like, oh, maybe the Chiefs would actually dare to do this. Well, the thing about Kansas City, you also have to remember they did not pay Tyreek Hill just a year or 2 ago, and like he was $30 million. Of course, that's really big money.
But that shows you what it only takes one team to set the market.
Exactly. Yes. But so like you look at Kansas City, you're like, well, maybe they wouldn't go for Michael Pittman because they already declined their wide receiver, who is proven to be more than Michael Pittman Jr. at least at this point of both of their careers in the NFL. So it would take a team. It would be very surprising, I guess, for a team to offer a contract that is more than the Colts would want to match and give up 2 first-round picks to get him. It's an unlikely scenario, so that's why Chris Ballard comes out and tells us he's going to be a Colt in the fall.
Well, and I mean, it's a different position, completely different situation, but we had so many teams that were starved for what are we going to do at quarterback? What are we going to do at quarterback? And nobody would go for Lamar Jackson last year because they didn't want to give up those 2 draft picks, those 2 first-round picks. We're looking at wide receivers here, and yeah, that position has taken an outsized importance in the league over the last few years for sure.
Collusion, Matt. Collusion.
But like, if you're not going to give up 2 first-round picks for a franchise quarterback, I cannot see you doing that for a wide receiver, even though, you know, Pitt is accomplished and he's young.
Right. But here's the deal with Pitt also. He's not a Pro Bowl wide receiver.
True.
Like he's not the elite of the elite. He's not Justin Jefferson here. We're not talking about that level right now. Like, we like Pittman here. We like him a lot. He has scratched his potential and done different things in different years. Like last year, the last 2 years, really, he's been more of a possession receiver. 3 years ago, when who was here, he was more of a downfield guy.
Got deep.
Yeah. And so, but again, the last 2 years, the quarterbacks throwing him the ball have not been the proper quarterbacks to push the ball down the field. So you figure you mix what you have seen from him over the couple years of his career. If you have a quarterback consistently who can get him the ball at different levels of the field, that he can showcase all of those talents and be a more well-rounded wide receiver in the future. And so that's why we're talking about him in the $23, $25 million category, even though you'd think maybe any 1 year out there, maybe doesn't deserve quite that attention. But again, you're betting on what he's going to be if you get everything mixed together from what you've seen in his first couple years of his career.
I've always argued to some point that I would like to see more. You'd like more out of Pittman.
Yeah.
But how much of that is him? How much is that, again, like you talked about, is the team limiting the yards per catch and down the field? Everybody wants Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Mahomes. You want those guys, but there's only 5 or 6 of those guys. Everybody wants Justin Jefferson or Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs or T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins is sort of the same, a little more explosive. But it's okay to not have that guy, and if you don't have that guy, you still have to have a guy that is near that level. So, is Pittman a top 10 receiver? I can probably find 10 guys I would rather have, ideally, as I could find X number of quarterbacks I'd rather have than Anthony Richardson. But you still have to have quality at the position, and as we've talked about, they've sort of painted, and you talked about, they've sort of painted themselves into this corner that they have to retain Pittman because there's no plan B. Say you don't put the tag on him, or then you're going to pay $27 million for Mike Evans, and I'd rather have, despite Evans's body of work, would you take Pittman? I don't know. That'd be a tough one because Evans has been pretty darn good.
Scoring 10+ touchdowns a year.
Now he's 4 years older probably, but
yes,
I've always taken, whenever we talk, is he the long-term answer? In my mind, I've gone from long-term is like 3 years.
Right?
It is. Yeah. Unless you're a quarterback, it's give me 3 years and then we'll talk about it. But failing a long-term deal, it'll be the franchise tag. And I've talked about, we may have mentioned it last week, is in my heart, Ballard knows that we can get this thing done long-term or we can't. And the one negative on this contract, I think, is the deadline isn't until like July. And things get done on deadlines. So as much as you want it done now, so you don't have to franchise him, you can extend this. There's nothing precluding you from getting a long-term deal done in the summer, because that's when the deadline is. And again, everything gets done on deadlines, and there's no real hard deadline right now to get this done or else.
So with that the case, that's where we are at Michael Pittman Jr. will no doubt provide updates over the coming weeks based on what happens. And next week we'll
You think it's franchise tag?
I think it's franchise tag.
Okay, but do you think it's franchise tag for the season or until the summer?
No, I think it's until the summer. I think Pittman goes out and sees what else is out there.
Agreed.
And I think he probably signs whatever deal the Colts, maybe even the same one the Colts have in front of him right now. We'll see. But
the old Jonathan Taylor. Oh, we're thinking of it maybe 3 years, $42 million.
Right,
and that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it just depends on whether a team is willing to roll the dice. On those first round picks to give them an offer sheet.
Yeah. My spitball is 4 years, 96, or 4 years, 98, something around that.
50,
that
60 guaranteed.
Yeah, right around that range. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we will see.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
But it only takes one team
Exactly.
to overpay Christian Kirk,
exactly.
who proved to be worth the contract.
Actually,
very
it was
much
pretty.
valuable,
He's been very
right.
good for them. So it's funny that it was derided, but it worked out real well for
I
Jacksonville.
thought it was crazy.
Absolutely.
we all
So
did.
did I. And it worked out great for Jacksonville.
Anthony Richardson has been making some progress. Chris Ballard speaking about AR. Not too much that's beyond what
He didn't move the needle a lot more. But
No. Exactly. I mean, we're not going to know anything until he's on the field and until he's like with his teammates, until he's practicing, and like everyone's going to say he wants to push it. Richardson does. Ballard said his job and the training staff job is to say, "Whoa,
been there before, not doing it again."
Exactly. So to be like, this is not the path we're going down. So trying to keep the train on the rails as it moves forward at the same time.
Because like you said, there's no reason. Now you want him making his regular progress.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be ready until May.
And no one's afraid of him not being ready in May right now. That's the thing. So steady regular progress will get you there. You anticipate, at least right now. So there's no sense in pushing things when there's nothing to push for. Again, like you say, deadline spur action. The deadline isn't until May. That's fine.
And that's a soft deadline.
Right.
I
It's
mean,
a very
you want him
soft
out there
deadline.
when you're about. You get. I think they start off-season work in middle of April, second
Correct.
week of April. But the first 3 weeks are conditioning and things.
Right.
And then you
It's
ramp
not
it
football.
up. And then it's OTAs. He needs to be out there for OTAs. He just does. And he probably will be.
Braden Smith did have surgery on his left knee. Smith missed 7 games on and off last season, came back for the last couple, where you can tell he was laboring, but he was probably the Colts' most valuable offensive lineman in those last couple games of the season as he finished off very much in pain. But Smith did have a procedure there,
Did you say procedure or surgery?
I thought I had read surgery.
Oh, well, excuse me.
Then it was serious.
Yeah, it must have been really serious.
It's entirely possible that he said procedure during the presser.
That's just so crazy the way they do that.
No procedures for Jonathan Taylor, who had been injured in that final game of the season. So you never know how serious it was, but nothing there for him. Chris Ballard also gave a brief Jim Irsay update, saying that he is doing well, making improvements, still plugged into the process of taking one step forward. So nothing significant on that front.
It was more than when he at the end of the season he said he's stable.
Right.
So this was much more expansive. I mean,
yeah.
and that's where we are with this is we're looking for more, and we keep him plugged in, and he stays involved. You know how he loves the team. So I thought what he said yesterday was very encouraging.
Yes. I
still hope at some point either Jim or Carly talks. I just do. And it's going to be really, really difficult for them to do that because the first parts of the questions are going to be what's going on.
Right.
What have you been through and all this. And I understand the family privacies and all this, but this is a little different because this is the owner of your team. And so we'll see. We've got the owners' meetings coming up in late March, I think it is. Mm-hmm. Will he be there? And right now, I don't know. If he's not there, will Carly talk? Because she's almost always at league meetings.
Right.
I think Kaylin might be as well. I don't know, but Carly's sort of been the driving force, I think. Mm-hmm. And then remember, we always have Jim talk during the draft. We go back in his office and view his Ringo Starr drums and all the stuff. But it's a different time. But again, at some point, I just think there needs to be some clarification of he's doing this, but we're doing this, Carly's doing this, and I assume Ballard's taking a stronger role. But knowing Jim Irsay, this is his team, and it's for him, it's family and team in that order, and team's really important. So it's just encouraging to see that he, as he posted, is it in early March or February, that he was on the mend,
right?
And that's just great news.
Chris also added that he and Shane don't do anything without talking to Jim Irsay first, which, well, to be fair, there's nothing much for them to do right now except sign Michael Pittman Jr. into a long-term deal.
And the other free agents too.
Exactly, yes.
So, but I think that's, how often do they talk? I think they talk a lot. I mean, Chris told me today, he said, he talked to Jimmy 30 minutes last night. There are things that are going on now that have to go on. Again, free agency. The draft, not so much. I mean, as far as having to get things done. Right now, it's re-signing your own guys and lining up which guys you might pursue in free agency.
Right.
And I think that's still Chris and the personnel department's view. And then it's putting price tags on that. And that's the owner has to sign off on that. And it's funny, we'll get to it about the report card. One of the areas the Colts were downgraded in was ownership, and players wondered if the owner was willing to pay to field a strong roster. I'm thinking, who is this player? Because they've overpaid to do that. So again, whatever they do in retaining their owner in free agency, Chris Ballard will have flexibility in the backing of ownership to do, for the most part, whatever he wants to do.
Chris Ballard also spoke highly of Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, the rookie cornerbacks last year, as well as Kenny Moore. And so at this point, whenever a GM or a head coach is talking about a specific position, like if they're asked about a position, most of the time they'll talk about the guys they have in-house. So this is not too much of a surprise, even though you'll see a lot of mock drafts putting a cornerback to the Colts because
I could see a corner. I could.
Yep. Even with such a focus in last year's draft on corner, I mean, you forget
Well,
they also
Jalen
drafted
Jones was a 7.
Yeah, they also drafted Darius Rush, and they let him go. They drafted 3 corners
After a
there
pick
last
6.
year. Yeah, exactly. In the preseason, let him make a pick 6. Like, okay, that's enough. Have fun. And he ended up in Kansas City for a while. He ended up in Pittsburgh for a while. I don't know where he is right now. He might still be in Pittsburgh, but I forget. Nevertheless, so that even if Chris Ballard is speaking highly, Chap, of a position right now, I would not take it to mean anything in terms of whether they will or whether they will not pursue it, whether it's in free agency or the draft.
He was asked about
it's smokescreen season,
right? He was asked something, which is a good question to ask, and
of course.
And you knew what you were going to get. They said, "Well, do you, in your mind, as you sit here today, do you have a pretty good idea of what you want to do at 15, and who might be there?" And he said, "Yes." You want to share that? No. So, and again, for anyone who thinks any GM is going to spill their guts and tell us what they're thinking seriously and what they're doing, they're crazy. Because this is the time, which we always mention, this is the time that disinformation rules. Whether it's trying to leak information last year on C.J. Stroud that's going to drive him down, or over the next month we're going to see Caleb Williams and Drake May and is it Jaden Daniels. These guys are going to be ripped apart. Mm-hmm. They're going to be picked apart, and you're going to think, who would take this guy number 1?
Say suddenly these guys can't throw a football.
Right, and they've not played for months. But that's where we are. So I'm just warning people, or just be careful what you believe, because there's not much out there that's going to be true.
Mm-hmm. And the ideas of what the Colts can do with that first pick are so wide-ranging, because at 15, I've seen some draft analysts analyze this class and say that there's some teams out there that have between 20 and 30 first-round grades on players, and a lot of the times it's between 10 and 20, depending on the year. So it seems like there's more talent in the pool this year, so there will be more options wherever you can go, wherever it's – there's a lot of speculation in terms of like who fits where, who fits better. Like there's a lot of talented players. You figure, oh, this guy could help. Well, this guy could help too. Well, it probably goes a long ways to like what analyst, how a specific analyst feels you should build a team. So then you should – if you're us and analyzing from the Colts perspective, like just think of how the Colts have built teams in the past with and how Chris Ballard, what his philosophies are.
And he mentioned yesterday again, protecting the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Could they take an offensive tackle at 15?
Exactly. And like I said on this podcast a couple weeks ago, like I don't want to put that out of the realm of possibility. Even though you look at the Colts offensive line and it performed pretty well last year.
Everybody's under contract. Everybody's coming back except Braden, relatively healthy.
But what do you do with like if this is supposed to be a really good offensive tackle specifically draft, and there's going to be a bunch of them here at the Combine this week. Like if somebody's here and he tests out of the water, because you know that the Colts love their RAS scores, maybe somebody benches like a crazy number and there's a broad jump and a shuttle cone drill that
you get a Quentin Nelson workout,
all mixes together, and you're like, well, we got to get this guy here at 15. Then you take the guy and you move guys around. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility for either Braden Smith or Bernard Ryman to shuffle inside, or to get draft a guy who's been a tackle in college. Guard. Exactly, and for them to move inside. Like it's building. Chris Ballard has built on the lines. He has, and after that he is like, as much as it has maybe sometimes frustrated Colts fans, he's pushed back drafting the skilled players.
Isn't it more likely with his
history?
His history is that he takes a tackle at 15 and he takes a receiver in round 2
at 46.
Because everybody says it's a deep receiver draft,
right?
And I've always said bring Pittman back, which they're going to, and then get a veteran free agent receiver, who's not 35 but is 28 or whatever, and can be that guy. And he talked again. He's always talked. He said he in January said on my headstone it'll say he loved offensive linemen. Well, that's and we've seen what happens when you don't have an offensive line 2 years ago. So, but again, we can sit here and we will over the next several weeks. You can argue very strongly for cornerback, for receiver, for tight end, for edge rusher, and for offensive line. Now, all you really can argue about is running back and quarterback. Everything else, to me, it's too high for a safety. But everything else you can argue and say, yeah, I can see that.
Yep. And if you look at 20 mock drafts analyzed by Colts.com this week, JJ, good friend JJ Stankovitz for Colts.com, does like a mock draft Monday. He'll probably do it most Mondays, if not every Monday now, between now and the draft. Just seeing where different other analysts have the Colts, what they have them doing. 9 of the 20 had them taking a cornerback. 6 had defensive end, defensive tackle. 3 went tight end, which of course would be Brock Bowers. And then 2 had wide receivers taken there. And I believe Mel Kiper had them taking a wide receiver. He was one of the 2. Had them taking Keon Coleman out of Florida State. Yeah. At that point, you figure the top 3 wide receivers are gone. But after that, there's a couple other guys who are probably intriguing. And again, it depends on what you value in wide receivers in terms of
it depends. Yeah, it depends on free agency.
Yeah, and that too.
And what you do,
100%.
Well, because I really think the really good teams try to re-sign their own. That makes sense. And again, the Colts have 4 or 5 quality free agents that would behoove them to re-sign. If you don't re-sign Kenny Moore, well, then all of a sudden cornerback
becomes
really,
a big priority.
Because really a priority. I think they're in a position where roster-wise, nothing just cries out that, man, we've got to have this at 15, because you can argue 3 or 4 spots that we could really enhance our roster at that spot.
And whether it's defensive end like Laiatu Latu out of UCLA and Jared Verse out of Florida State, whether it's cornerback Quinion Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, like.
Wouldn't it be cool to have a lot of names like that? Clinton Dix.
Kool-Aid McKinstry. General Booty as your quarterback from UCLA.
Sauce Gardner. I mean, you could have the old name team.
I'd love it.
As long as they can play, that's cool.
And listen, like I want to point this out, and this kind of ties into our discussion on the Combine this week. And it's not as much your on-field drills that you're going through, but it is the numbers that you're getting behind the scenes in those drills that I talked about: the 40-yard dash, shuttle, 3-cone drill, broad jump, high jump. Like those things, the Colts have proven that they care about those physical traits. The last 2 years, and that's where RAS scores come in. The RAS score, if you don't know what it is basically a compiled number that analyzes all of those athletic numbers that are put out by players and kind of evaluates them by percentage of where, like a wide receiver runs a 4.32 40, and that puts him in the top 2%, of wide receivers to ever test. If he runs a 4.45, then he's in the top, like 40% or something like that of wide receivers. So it weights it kind of that way by percentage. And it gives you a final score at the end of the day between 1 and 10. I strongly encourage you, if you are a Colts fan, to just Google RAS scores. You'll go to like ras.football or something like that. It is kind of the main website for it. And it can break down different players. It can go by class. You can go by like different team. And the last 2 years, the Colts scores, like they evaluate this back at least to like the year 2000 from what I've seen on their website. So it's like 23 years of draft history at least. And the Colts, the last 2 years, 2023 and 2022, hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They have 2 of the top 9 scores all time in terms of average RAS score for your entire draft class. So the Colts' average RAS score in the last 2 draft classes, those 2 have been 2 of the highest, the 9 highest.
You got the names there?
You mean the other teams? Well, I mean, this is total, like the entire draft class. I got you. So yeah, the 2023. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this well. I'm trying to. It's a little bit of a world set.
I remember last year that they just had a crazy amount of just super freaky athletic guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like at the top of the top.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, 2022, their average RAS score was higher, believe it or not.
Yeah, 'cause that was like Jelani Woods.
That was Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
Yes, that was Alec Pierce. That was Bernard Ryman. So yes, the average RAS score, the most all time was actually the 2002 Chiefs. That was a long time ago. Their average RAS score was 9.88 out of 10, that's a huge number. And the Colts last year were a 9.48. And then 2022, the Colts were a 9.63. You look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, and I believe he was either a 9.99 or a 10. And the same with Juju Brents, was either a 9.99 or a 10. If you are a 10, chap, then you are the highest tested player that's ever been recorded.
And again, it's just you just don't want athletes. You want guys who have the traits you want. But then what this does is Chris Ballard and his staff and his personnel guys are saying, here's a great athlete with all what we want, speed and agility and all this. Coach him up. Mm-hmm. And if you get the right coaching staff, Reggie Wayne, this guy knows what he's doing. And a lot of these coaches, Tony Sperano, they know what they're doing. We saw what his impact. So give them athletes and let the coach them up. We've seen that work in the past and not work in the past. I think we've seen it work the last few years.
Right, and there are players that again have worked, especially the last couple of years, like you said. You look back to Shaq Leonard. It was a really highly athletic linebacker coming from a lesser tier of schools, an FCS program, but he tested out of his cleats, so they drafted him. Jake Witt, a 7th round pick last year, a guy that I mocked to the Colts, a 7th round offensive tackle out of some bumble you-know-what college in Michigan. I mocked to the Colts.
What's the matter, you?
Exactly. And I did it along with Juju Brents and Anthony Richardson in our mock draft last year, not because I'm the smartest person in the world, but because I know what Chris Ballard wants. And again, if you are listening to us right here, you're getting this information because of our insight into Chris Ballard. And I think that we give you that better or as good, certainly, as anybody else out there. So, like I said, if you want to have an idea what Ballard's going to do in this draft, you need to follow RAS scores.
Because he follows his routine because he believes in it.
Exactly. And that's, to a point, Matt, that's kind of what the job of a scouting department is to do. Get the most capable guys in here and let the coaches do their job.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with Anthony Richardson and Juju Brents. Those guys have traits that you can measure and you can see that are off the charts. And that's why they ended up getting both of those guys. And, we were last year with the quarterbacks. We were all kind of sweating. What's Ballard going to do? The Colts aren't going to trade up. They're at 4. They're not going to get the guy that they want. And as it turns out, they did get the guy that they want.
Right. And so if they're looking at a guy who's a cornerback, just as an example, in this year's draft in the first round, it's going to matter who tests the best out of all these guys. Because especially at corner, Chris Ballard has proven to really value traits. And you look at what Juju Brents was last year. He's an athletic freak who scored either a 9.9 or 9.99 or a 10 in RAS scores. So if someone is up there again, whether it's Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo or Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, if someone just blows the testing out of the water.
If there's plays that are even, they're going to go with the tester.
They will go with the testing and say, again, to the coaches, you coach them up. We're bringing this talent in for you, and then we'll see what we get at the end of the day. So definitely pay attention to that over the coming weeks, whether it's at the combine or at pro day. And who knows? Maybe we'll hit 4 this year. I'll hit 4 in my Colts mock draft players that
and you'll let us know that you did.
I will. Time and time again.
You can talk about that all year.
Darn right. If I hit 4, oh my goodness. I was happy enough with 3 for crying out loud. And I even got the trade down to get Juju Brents. I traded back in the mock draft and drafted him there in the second round. So a few more things that we can discuss. The salary cap came in, the exact number, and it kind of changes up some of the numbers we did last week when we were talking about the franchise tag because the numbers jumped so highly. It jumped $30 million. So the Colts have now a projected $72.3 million in cap space, which is the 6th most in the NFL. And so that's a good thing for Chris Ballard. It's a good thing for players right now this offseason who are free agents. It's a good thing for Michael Pittman Jr., who's looking for a big contract, or other guys like a Grover Stewart or a Kenny Moore.
Other teams get the $30 million as well, so the free agent market is a little fatter as well.
Yep, all those teams that had salary cap issues, maybe some of them don't have quite as many of them anymore, even though, as we say, the cap's made up and it really doesn't matter. There's ways to get under it.
The Denver Broncos still have to pay a lot of money to Russell Wilson one way or another.
Exactly, or they're going to trade him and have someone else pay all that money, which is probably unlikely, but they're going to have to shell out some money. Now they are allowed to spend more money. Not that these NFL owners don't have that type of money. It's the amount that they're allowed to spend, of course, according to the cap. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And if what was I going to say? If agents had been discussing contracts with GMs over the past couple weeks, now they're going back
before the boost.
Like, hey, this is tremendous news.
All right. About 20%.
Yeah.
Whatever we talked about, let's go like 20%.
Yeah, about those numbers we were discussing there.
Let's double it.
Let's keep looking. The NFLPA has given out its report card for different teams across the league. Like Chap said, the Washington Commanders dead last in the league in terms of all these grades mixed together for evaluating franchises as per the players. Out of 32 teams in the NFL, the Colts ranked 22nd overall. So that's not exactly the best number there. They received particularly low marks for treatment of families and for team travel.
The treatment of families, I believe, was game day.
Game day, yes.
They don't pay for childcare. Is that what it is?
Something like that, yes.
I think it was that they don't offer paid
child care.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they got a D grade for both of those. Again, treatment of families and team travel.
And the team travel, I'll post something maybe next week on this. It had to do with players getting not preferential treatment in seating and getting in crammed seats while
not having enough
team
room.
personnel might be up front in the cushier seats.
Right. Exactly. So you look around the league and different teams, like some of the teams that are at the bottom of some of these.
You see, it was 31. Kansas City.
Kansas City was way down there at the bottom.
Washington came in 32 again, so there is consistency in D.C.
Good for them. It's very consistent. Consistently bad. But everybody wants consistency, Chap.
As long as you know what you're getting.
Exactly. And everybody in Washington apparently knows what they're getting. Shane Steichen had the highest grade in terms of all the things the Colts gave out for head coach. He got an A- from the team, from the players. And the Colts got C grades for food/cafeteria, weight room, strength coaches, and ownership.
And I think that the C grades on like weight room and strength coaches there weren't enough of hands for players.
Yeah, they didn't feel, as far as nutrition goes, they didn't feel like they were getting personalized plans that really suited them.
And again, these are averages of players' responses, and it probably takes 3 or 4 players to trash your rating,
take you down. Yeah.
And Chris was asked about this on Wednesday. He said, "Yeah, I saw it, and they pay attention. They do." And facilities, how you handle your facilities. The Colts have great facilities. I've always you use these as guidelines if you're a GM that runs things the right way, or an owner, because you do want to have attractive facilities and infrastructure. I'm telling you, free agency comes down to 2 things: money and money. It just does. We were talking how a couple of players finally told us last year, maybe it was Ekubom.
Might have been Ebukam, yeah.
He said, "Yeah, they offered me the best contract." Mm-hmm. That's great. It's money. It's seldom is a player at a point in his career to where he can turn down. There's a few players just because of an Aaron Rodgers type of thing. But if you're a young player or looking for that second contract, you're going to go where the money is. You just are.
And I forget the exact line from Moneyball, but it was something like, it's not about the money, it's about what the money says. But at the same point, it's about the money too, because the money says that you're going to be valued and you're going to be used and you're going to be propped up in whatever location you are. And that's what the Colts did with Ebukam specifically. He had a career year because he had great opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and again, it's most places, except for the Rats, are not bad places to work. It's just some are better than others.
Right.
If any, those of us who are able to walk through the Colts locker room, it's beautiful.
It's a fine place to work.
It's a fine place to work.
You want to come here to No, I'm not going to say it. Go ahead.
Yeah, as like our studio here, which
beautiful studio
is
here.
Spartan.
Yes.
But by and large, most places are okay to work in and above okay to work in. The Colts have the practice fields, the indoor facility, weight room, and then I don't want to say nitpicking because these other things are important about having enough people in the training room, hands-on, and nutritions and all that. But by and large, except for rats, most places are good to work in.
The team officially announced some coaching staff additions. Defensive line coach Charlie Partridge, who used to be with Pitt. Passing game coordinator Alex Tanney, formerly with the Eagles, worked with Shane Steichen there. Assistant defensive backs coach Justin Hamilton with the Titans and Virginia Tech before this. Director of sports performance Mike Minnis, formerly with the Philadelphia Eagles. Is that replacing Rusty?
Rusty Jones.
Yeah, Rusty Jones. So
who had done it forever.
Right. So that's an important position because, I mean, heck, you're looking at a grade there from the NFLPA report card. And so that's like, if the foundation isn't there, then nothing else is there.
Right.
So if you're looking at someone that is an important person in that building that we don't talk about normally, it's not the head coach, it's not the GM, it's not the owner, it's not a player. Like, the director of sports performance is probably, if not the most important, a top 5 most important person outside
of
the
players.
Biggest, yes. The top tier in that building. So that's a significant hire for sure. Okay. Free agency key dates looking forward. We have one more couple days, like 4 days from now, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday. So I guess 5 days until the window for the franchise tag / transition tag is over. I anticipate to see Michael Pittman Jr.
How many guys have been tagged? Is it just
I think
one?
it's just T. Higgins so
T.
far.
Higgins.
That's the only one I can recall. So as of the recording of this podcast,
Right.
the caveat.
Right. So there will be more, and like I said, I anticipate Pittman to be one of them, and that's not anything to throw hands about.
No, and if anyone gets bent out of shape, then you don't understand
what's going on
the
behind
process.
the scenes. You haven't listened to our podcast this week or last week about what's going on. So hopefully, if you're still listening right now and you hear it, you know, you already know. But we'll add again. Like no reason to freak out if that happens because he's going to be here and they're working toward a contract. Scouting combine's going on right now. Unrestricted free agency negotiations begin March 11th, so we're about 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks away from that. And March 13th, we are about 2 weeks away exactly from the new year beginning. And teams can begin to sign unrestricted free agents at 4 p.m. on March 13th. 1 month later is OTAs in April. Like we said, that'd be a great day to have Anthony Richardson back. And I assume he'll probably be back at the facility if he's just rehabbing because you're doing strength and conditioning at that point. Maybe I shouldn't assume that, but it would make sense for him to be there. And then OTAs continue into a little bit more serious work over the coming weeks, especially after the draft, April 25th through the 27th in Detroit, as the Colts hold the 15th overall pick right there, at least for now. And plenty of options to discuss, and we will discuss them over the coming weeks for sure, and probably I'll bring some of the top RAS scores next week, and for our podcast for just to kind of give people a breakdown of what happened here.
Yeah, it stuck out in my mind last year how big the RAS scores were for the Colts and the previous year. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely we'll want to look at those.
Yeah, May 2nd will be the deadline to exercise options on first round picks, and that includes Kwity Paye from 2021. That means the Colts have an option to pick up a 5th year for Kwity, which would be valued at $20+ million.
No, I saw the number was 13.
13? I thought no. What? Are you sure?
I'm almost positive. I saw the first round. I saw the 5th year options, and because it's in tiers.
That's right, and it's also sort of
Pro Bowl
performance based.
Multiple Pro Bowls, one Pro Bowl, no Pro Bowls, and no Pro Bowls. It was $14 million, and then if you didn't hit playtime levels, it was 13 and change.
Well, it shows you that I don't know what I'm talking about. So
I thought that, and then because the quarterbacks is like, I don't know, 30 million or whatever. But it was, I was surprised that it was that low, which in my mind, then you do it.
Then you pick it up. Yeah, exactly. Quiddy's definitely worth $13 million. I wouldn't say he's worth $25 million, but 13.
As you ramble, I'll see if I can find the number.
No, I think we can do that more again in the future. We don't need to get too much into it. We're bringing this to a
it was
close.
Definitely, I don't know exactly what the number was, but I saw the same thing, and it was a lot lower than I thought it was, and it was because Quiddy hadn't hit Pro Bowl, All-Pro,
primarily
that
multiple
stuff.
Pro Bowls,
Yes.
one Pro Bowl.
Got it. Okay, cool. Then that's really good news for everyone except Quiddy Pay, to be perfectly honest. No disrespect to Quiddy, but I really do think that's good news for the Colts and makes that decision more of a decision at least, and maybe one that kind of tilts in the favor of Chris Ballard to be able to sign him, because we've talked about, even though Quiddy hasn't been a 10-plus sack guy, last year he certainly took steps forward, and he's definitely valuable in terms of a rush defensive lineman. Excuse me, a rush defender is what I'm trying to say. And
13.3.
There you go, $13.3 million. That's a very attractive number. Very attractive
very livable number.
Yes, very livable. If he would probably get something like that on the free market year to year, I've got to think that he would.
And then if he emerges this year, next year, then you
tremendous.
Super.
Yes.
Then you face the enviable task of having to pay for a top pick that you hit on,
right?
Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, we've said that before. That's a great problem to have. Like paying a left tackle money in a couple years in Bernard Ryman.
Bernard Ryman, right?
Yeah.
Boy, it's going to suck to pay him $20 million. No, you're going to have your left tackle.
It's going to be awesome to have a left tackle. Exactly. So those are the problems that you want, and those are the problems that Chris Ballard will have to deal with. But of course, right now it is the combine on his plate, and after that, free agency. So in terms of adding to the foundation that is already here, plenty that we will discuss in the coming weeks on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. You can read Mike Chappell's work online at fox59.com and cbs4indy.com. Follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone. Collectively, I am Dave G at _sports. Matt is at Statamatti. Mike is at mchappell51. We do appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.